Hey, Alex Kubasek here with ConvertSource Podcast. So one of the big problems that a lot of businesses run into in the online ecosystem and space is that algorithms are constantly changing. Things are constantly changing in the digital space, not only just to keep it an even playing field for businesses, but also to continue to level up and really get the most and get the best bang for their buck. Now, this can also present problems. This can also create opportunities. And today on the podcast, we're going to be going over how this can be turned into opportunities to make it so that you're constantly staying ahead of the game. So stay with us.
3,
2,
1.
engage.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The ConvertSource Podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.
Hey, so obviously we've all been through this, right? So algorithms are constantly changing. And one of the big things that we're always hearing about is Facebook's algorithm changed or Google's algorithm changed. Now, this happens a lot more often than we'd like, right? This causes us a lot of pain, whether we have internal teams that are, dealing with these platforms for us, or if we have like other agencies, other vendors, partners, things like that handle these things for us. But regardless, whether you outsource it or whether you have an internal team, these pains still continue to plague businesses. And if you look at it the right way, and if you really focus in on opportunity with these things, it really can help change the perspective and actually put you much farther ahead than the guy next to you. So today we're going to be talking about that and, creating some solutions and really helping you see this from a scope of opportunity, really versus, doom and gloom. So obviously the very big one that is most recent. So this is the summer of 2022. Does anybody else have that issue where they literally just kind of forget what day it is, what week it is, what year it is sometimes? But really, the biggest one that we've heard of so far that has caused the most pain for businesses is Apple's iOS 14 update, iOS 14.5, iOS 15. And there's a lot of different things that have been wrapped around this. And really, at the end of the day, the first swing of this really affected Facebook, literally in the tune of $10 billion worth. And really, obviously, if you think about it, advertisers dropped off, sponsors dropped off. I mean, Facebook, this looked like Armageddon for Facebook. But since then, obviously, you've probably heard this kind of surfacing now. There's, Facebook's conversion API that came out several months ago. It is a good tool, and really what it's out there for is to be able to close the gap, or at least start to shrink the gap of accuracy of reporting of your value action. So whether you're optimizing for leads or sales or what have you, really that's what Facebook's conversion API, aka CAPI, was designed for. Now, still not the greatest. It's not the most accurate. And that's the thing. That's what it really comes down to, because like if you're an apparel, you're selling sneakers, clothes, different elements like that. Essentially, whenever Apple first released this update, iOS 14, it really essentially rendered the Facebook Pixel, the thing that we've all been, come to love and use and really get good data from. It kind of rendered it moot, because really what had happened is that Facebook said, or Apple said, okay, if you do not wish to be tracked by Facebook, we're going to let you not do it. So all you got to do is just opt out of tracking. Now, you can imagine how this would really put like a gigantic hole in tracking for businesses, because the data that was being reported back from Facebook's platform was not as accurate. And really, it was to the tune of about, when this first came out, about 40 to maybe 60% on a good day. And that's only if you hadn't been completely affected by iOS 14 in your ad account yet. Now, the thing is that they always do these in a slower rollout. So you may not have been slapped by it immediately whenever this happened. And this was, I believe, April 2021. And that's whenever it was supposed to be like the Armageddon, right? Now, it didn't happen just that day. typically, if you talk to most ad agencies, you will find that we really started to see this issue happen more prevalently around like the June to July 2021 area. And then obviously it started to just get worse and worse and worse. Now, Facebook obviously came out with the conversion API, aka CAPI. And like I said, it's a good tool. They're constantly updating it to make it more accurate, but it's essentially placing certain code and programming on your website or on the what's called the server or domain side of things, so that it cannot just have to solely rely on the pixel. And so really that's where, if you've ever been inside of the, ad platform before on Facebook, you'll see specifically where that starts to kind of take place in terms of the programming, setting it up within your ad campaigns and things like that, or on your, business manager backend. But again, that's a conversation for another day. But essentially, you've also got other third-party tracking folks out there. And of course I can put those in the description below, but you've got Hyros. That was kind of like the first one that before Apple's iOS 14.5 or 14, they were kind of like the first ones on the market, but they were already for years before that, making it so that you could deploy code or literally just certain parameters on your campaigns to report to your backend or to the Hyros backend more accurate data to help you know what creative is performing the best, what ad copy is performing the best, this, that, and the other thing. Now, obviously, as you can imagine, they were kind of rolling in it whenever Apple's iOS first came out. But then, of course, you have other folks that are constantly coming out. I mean, another notable one that came out like really quickly after was called AnyTrack. And that also was like the same principle, a little bit more user-friendly and not as expensive. Hyros was extremely expensive because they were the first name, in town. They were the first game. So really, at this point, obviously coming many, many months after this Apple 14, iOS 14 slap here with Facebook, clearly that was one massive algorithmic change. Now, today we're not necessarily talking about all the things that went wrong, because we already know that things are going to go wrong, whether it's a great algorithm and it's well seasoned or whether you just went through a change. The name of the game to make sure that you stay ahead of the curve is always be testing. So ABT, kind of like that thing with Glenn Ross. Try saying that 5 times fast. The ABC, always be closing. As an advertiser, and as a digital marketer, you always want to be testing. Always. Really, one of the biggest reasons is because every single minute of the day, you're constantly making it so that you're grabbing onto new opportunities from the newest version of the algorithm. Because every single day, like after the launch of a new algorithm, it's always learning, right? Because the thing is that since advertisers like us, we're always literally buying media, we're always optimizing things, we're always testing. That's constantly feeding the new algorithm data. And really what it does is it really helps the AI, and it really helps make it so that the algorithm is getting smarter based on the business's purchase of the media, but also the interaction of their user. And so that's why you always want to be testing, because the thing is that you'll notice that, like, for example, if you have a campaign that was, performing really great, right? And you wanted to, let's say, duplicate it and just increase the budget, because little insider tip, always a very big no-no to just double a Facebook campaign's budget. You'll notice your costs go crazy and the campaign will fail. So that's usually a big no-no if not done correctly. So in this case, really, if you're like thinking, oh my gosh, we have a great campaign that's doing really well, we want to duplicate it and just increase the budget, and it's going to perform that factor X, like if you increase the budget times 2, let's say it was like it's going to perform 2 times better than this one was. Not necessarily the case. Why? Because you'll notice that the algorithm is different than it was the day before. And so, and of course, that's not always the case. A little disclaimer, this stuff, like I said in the beginning, is always changing. So, you could see great success. It could plateau. It could take a huge dive, but that's why we always got to be testing. That's why it's always ABT, because those things can happen at any moment. And the really nice thing about digital advertising is that you literally are able to see those in real time. You're able to take a look at your metrics on a moment by moment basis. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because it'll drive you crazy. One of my first mentors was very, very explicit when she said this. And this was probably about 10 years ago. Facebook came out with advertising around like 2009, and I had first started, buying media on there around then. But then I started to get a lot better at it, started making relationships, connections. This mentor of mine, a couple of years after Facebook launched their ad platform, had said, do yourself a favor. Launch the campaign. Put in your due diligence, prepare, always prepare, because if you plan, you're going to be a lot more successful than obviously if you don't plan. So in this case, she said, do your due diligence, build the campaign, launch the campaign, then pour yourself a very large glass of wine and walk away for 3 days. So, that's what a lot of this is. It's a lot of trial and error, yes, but the thing is that if you're always testing, you'll find that you're never really losing money because you're always learning something valuable, but you're always spending for progress and learning more and having your campaigns do better than they did before, because you're always going to learn something from the failed campaign from before, if you have one, of course. So that's why you always have to be testing. And that's really the pinnacle of weapons technology, if you will, for advertising. You can have all the gadgets in the world. You can have all the software. One of the big ones right now is software that writes ad copy for you. You can have plenty of those, right? And, it'll make your job easier to get your campaign launched faster. There are several out there. I use them. We use them to this day at ConvertSource. So they're a great tool. But you can have all the shiny tools. You can have all of the analytics, apps plugged into your website. You can have all the tools in the world is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to be agile with your testing. Because the thing is, those apps, those shiny objects are only going to get you so far, like ad copy. It's not going to constantly write itself and update itself inside of the ad platform. However, that's a really great idea. So whoever is in the process of putting that technology together, I'd love to invest. Give me a call. By the way, for those of you who are on the show today and really want to know more about this and how to strategize better testing, quicker testing, understanding what benchmarks to really look for to tell you yes, scale or pivot or maybe just turn the campaign off, support@convertsource.com. Just send us an email. We'd love to have a conversation with you and really help make sure that your strategy and your agility with digital advertising and online marketing is up to par so that you can be as successful as possible. But back to what we were saying in terms of the pinnacle of weapons technology, that's really what the testing mindset is. Because when you have the mindset of always be testing, you're always on the hunt for opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean launch a campaign and immediately check back in an hour. And if you're not a millionaire in an hour, turn it off. Like I said, one of my early mentors said, do yourself a favor, pour a very large glass of wine and walk away for 3 days. You usually want to give it, depending on the budget, of course, you usually want to give it just a little bit of time, just so that it's delivering, just so that it's at least even getting close to exiting the learning phase. And for those of you who don't know, the learning phase is just basically when you launch a campaign, Facebook is literally just learning your particular audience with your message and your call to action over a period of time. That's kind of like the simple way to put it. And really there is a certain point of conversions or those value actions to where it will exit the learning phase. Now, today it's 50 conversions to exit the learning phase. Tomorrow it could be 100. But as I'm talking about this podcast right now, it's 50. And it has been for a while. But really, the learning phase is the most important to where you really have to kind of sit on your hands, right? And so depending on your budget, that could happen in 24 hours, that could happen in 2 days, that could happen 3 days, a week, etc. But the point is that you don't even necessarily have to get to exiting the learning phase. You just have to get to the point where you've given the campaign a couple of days, some day over day data, week over week data, what have you, to be able to know and get enough data to say, okay, here are the benchmarks I have, right? And per my industry, are these benchmarks going to make me profitable? And I could put that link in the description down below for basically the typical benchmarks for like Facebook advertising, Google advertising, and things like that. Because it's really important to make sure that whenever you have that always be testing mentality, whenever you're always looking for that opportunity, that you're also not so trigger happy that you turn off a showrunner, right? That you don't turn off a winner. So really, that's the best way to make you kind of like algorithm change proof. Because if you're somebody who just thinks of online marketing and digital advertising as really set it and forget it, I am sorry to burst your bubble, but you are sorely mistaken, sadly mistaken, hopelessly mistaken. And of course, I'm not trying to, get on your case or anything, but I implore you to adopt this strategy and the mindset of always be testing, always be looking for opportunity within these algorithmic shifts, because they're happening all the time. And the thing is that if you get caught behind and you are not of the always be testing mentality, you have an algorithmic shift and you're just letting the campaign run and kind of like seeing how we do, you might kind of start to see success. You might start to see some failure. And the thing is that you're not going to know because you're not paying attention. And that is the deadliest thing. And that's where a lot of companies lose a lot of money. And that's where you start to hear, oh, Facebook advertising doesn't work. Google advertising doesn't work. I'm going to go back to my table tents and my billboards, what have you. But the thing is, do yourself a favor. If you already have a plan to spend money on like a Facebook campaign or Google campaign, for example, do yourself a favor. Simply put some calendar reminders. If you're like me, this is my job. This is my passion. So I'm constantly looking at these things. I'm constantly in there and, not necessarily touching anything, but constantly looking at, optimization points, benchmarks, different things, because I could launch a campaign 3 days later. I'm like, oh my gosh, this copy is doing really well. I should have also put this in there. It might be doing even better. That's the always be testing mentality. That's the always be looking for opportunity mindset to really always have the sharpest sword, to be the sharpest crayon in the box, to be the sharpest tool in the shed, and whatever other analogies you want to hear. But it's not like a technical thing, right? So like today, whenever we first started off the show, I told you, I'm going to give you kind of like the Achilles heel to algorithmic changes, how you're going to defeat the algorithm shift. It's not a tool necessarily. Now, of course, like I said, there are tools that you can use. There's, Hyros, there's AnyTrack, there's, other platforms just like it. Do you need to use it? It helps, definitely helps, because, obviously after Apple's iOS 14 update, Facebook has kind of been scrambling and it hasn't been the same since. So having, something along those lines to make sure that you are closing as much of that gap as possible to make sure you have the most accurate data, because if we always have the be testing mindset and looking for opportunity, we need to make sure that we're testing off of the most accurate data possible, not, 40%, 60%, what have you. We need to have as much accurate data as possible to make the best testing and optimization decisions. And that's just really what it comes down to. So yes, use those tools, but also make sure that you are going off of accurate data to make it so that you're making the right decisions. But still coming back to the very beginning, it's not some esoteric weapon. It's not like the newest fad. It's not the newest app out there where you're getting in on the inside beforehand. No, that's not what it is. It's a shift in your mindset. It's making sure that you have your finger on your campaign's pulse every day, every couple of days. Always make sure that you're watching and measuring against these industry benchmarks. Now, of course, are they going to be specific to your particular call to action? No, but you can look at them as a jumping off point. Because, like, for example, let's say that you're in the education industry, but let's say instead of or the higher education industry, let's say instead of just applying to the overall university, maybe you're trying to get data or people to apply to this specific school within the university. Well, that's a little bit more down the funnel, a little bit more of a niched down call to action. So, of course, your costs and your KPIs and benchmarks are going to be a little bit different than the overall industry, but it's always good to have a jumping off point. It's so much better than just throwing, bait out there and not necessarily knowing, hey, am I even in the right pond? So that comes back to always be testing, always be looking for opportunity. That mindset is the secret weapon, the ace in the hole, the ace up your sleeve. Again, whatever analogy you want to use, that mentality is what is going to make it so that you are constantly setting yourself apart from your competitors. Because not everybody's going to be thinking like you. Not everybody is going to be as dialed in as you are. So I really implore you to take a look at your campaigns daily. Don't necessarily touch them daily, but make sure you're looking at the campaigns. Because in this particular climate of online marketing and digital advertising, it's kind of the wild, wild west, clearly. So if nothing else, make sure that you have this mentality and this way of thinking and this secret weapon to make sure that your campaigns are delivering. Sometimes your campaigns might not deliver. And it might be because the audience sizes are different, or maybe a third-party audience that you were using didn't completely populate yet, and it doesn't have anybody in it yet, but you were so excited you started running with it. I've seen it happen a lot. So do yourself a favor. Adopt this mindset. Adopt this mentality. It costs you nothing, and it's only going to provide you with so much more data. It's only going to provide you with so many more results to help you optimize your campaigns and then thus to optimize your business and really get more of that value action. If you're selling shoes, it'll help you sell more shoes. It's not going to cost you anything more because here's the thing. You already have your set budget. So I'm not even telling you, hey, spend more. Most agencies that see that you might be kind of like tapering off, not necessarily selling as much, or their results aren't as good, they're going to tell you, we need to spend a little bit more. There's a lot of noise in the space right now. We need to spend a little bit more. Before you spend any more money, or before you dig back into your pockets, or worse, your company's pockets, do yourself a favor. Test some new audiences. Test some new creative. You can go into these platforms and get as granular as you want in saying, okay, what ad copy is performing the best? What's the worst? What creative in terms of like videos and images performing the best? What's performing the worst? And you're giving yourself that data to match against your overall campaign benchmarks, KPIs, key performance indicators, etc. But you're able to make educated decisions to then help you make a better testing choice, make a better testing strategy. The one thing I would say is the most dangerous mindset of all really is not testing. If you think that, oh my gosh, we're going to launch this campaign and it's just going to be the greatest thing ever. We know exactly who our customer is. We know all of this. We know all of this. We're the smartest people in the room. I can guarantee you're not. Even some of the best advertisers in the world, the reason why they're the best advertisers in the world, is because they're always testing. Because no campaign is ever finite. No campaign is ever set it and forget it. These are living and breathing organisms, and you need to look at them that way because they are never done. Kind of just like your website. It's never done. Do you leave a billboard up for 20 years? No. You're probably going to refresh some things. You're probably going to go through a brand shift. You're probably going to go through some different things that makes you have to pull that billboard down and put another one up. See, so many people think that it's just, a set it and forget it mentality, and it's not. You need to always be testing. That is your secret weapon. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the show today. I welcome all of your feedback. Support@convertsource.com. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if we're doing really well. Let us know if the message sucks. Let us know if we need to put more energy, less energy. Let us know what you guys are thinking. We're always looking to make this better, to make sure that we're providing you with the most valuable data to help your business, and more importantly, to help your business help their or your end user. Because that's also a benchmark of ours. I've said it many times on this show before. Making you educated more so, right? Because we're not always going to be all knowing. We're human beings. We don't know everything. If we did, it wouldn't be fun, right? It wouldn't be, the market climate that it is, where it's competition, dominance, all those things that excite us. We want to make sure that we're providing the most up-to-date and effective proven strategies and education so that you can employ it in your business, so that you can help more of your ideal prospect. So guys, thank you so much for watching today, listening today, wherever you're consuming this. Like I said, support@convertsource.com. Let us know how we're doing. If you need help with your business, if any of this sounds interesting to you, if you want to know how to spice up your strategy, maybe how to create a little bit more of like a testing framework for your business and your campaigns, support@convertsource.com. We'd love to jump on the phone with you, schedule a call. Whatever you guys need to be successful, just let us know. Thank you so much for watching this. God bless, be great, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
When you want your leads and sales on autopilot and to accelerate your business, you come to the source. The Convert Source Podcast with Alex Kubasek. Let's go.